Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. It's October 27th, and this happened on this day in 1985.
To Motley. For the Titans.
Yes, that's Darryl Motley catching the final out of the 1985 World Series, clinching the Royals' Game 7 victory over the St. Louis Cardinals for the franchise's first championship. Just thought I'd share that. On today's SportsBeat KC, we talk to the man who knows everything about area high school football, Dion Clisson of PrepsKC.com. The postseason begins in Missouri and Kansas this weekend, and Dion breaks down the brackets. We discuss the favorites and the contenders, but we start our conversation about the process and competitive fairness. Dion has some thoughts on that. Okay, let's get started talking high school football playoffs with Dion Clisson. Dion, it's that time of year, and I love the feel of football this time of year. You know, it starts in the heat of August, and now we're at the edge of November, and there's a chill in the air, and it's football playoff season for the high schools in Kansas and Missouri. I want to get into both sides of the state line when it comes to brackets and favorites and all those things that we like to talk about. But before we do that, you wrote an interesting column this week. I want to get into it a little bit. And you're the best person qualified to do this. You just came up with some suggestions, some tweaks about the brackets and how the playoffs in both states might better operate. And I've covered high school sports in another state, and they do it differently than it's done in Missouri and Kansas. And you're familiar with it. It was in Virginia.
Yeah.
And of course, they even do it differently now in Virginia than when I was there back in the 80s. But anyway, let's start by kind of outlining how Missouri. We'll start with Missouri and how Missouri does its districts and bracket, and then maybe get you to suggest get your ideas on what might work a little bit better on the Missouri side. But let's start with that. First of all, there's 6 classes in Missouri.
6 classes, yeah. Class 6 has 32 teams. Class 1 has 64. Yeah. And 2 through 5, as of about last year, have them evenly spread out. It used to be they would, when they first went to 6 classes, it was, first off, it was 5 and 6 were 32 each. They basically split class 5 into 2 classes. And over time, that number, class 5 grew and it became kind of the catch-all. The others were all 64 and 5 was the catch-all. Well, it got to as big as, I think, 56, maybe 58. The number escapes me. I have to go back and look. Then it got down as low as 36. So then a couple of years ago, they decided they would keep one at 64 and then spread out the other ones evenly. So they all have about 40 or, 48 to 50, 52, 53. Then they also instituted a rule in terms of sizing that you can't be in a class with a school that is twice as big as you are, which really affects some class 2 and class 3. That's kind of that spot right there, class 1, 2, and 3 down that area. But occasionally a class 4 team, there might be that much of a spread. And I apologize, my voice. Yesterday was my doing my radio show and my podcast with Mick Schaefer, so Thursday's not my great voice day sometimes. We'll
take
so that's how they so that's how they spread them out class wise. And of course, there's multipliers for the private schools based on success, and that's how they all fit in. They split them all into 8-team districts. Not all, 2 through 5, especially. There's not an 8-team district. They're
7 and 6
17.
mostly. Yeah.
6 has 4 8-team districts. The rest all have 8 districts that have at least 6 or 7 teams, and then 1 has 8 districts that have hypothetically 8 teams. Occasionally, a team will drop after they don't release the classifications until after the first week of the season. So that's what they try and stop that from happening. You did have this year a team in the Lone Jack that just said, we're done before last week, and they're not playing. So Butler gets a bye. And so essentially it's a point system based on the winning, how much you win by, which is a plus 13, the record of your opponent, the classification of your opponent, and if you're in a class below class 6, there's no penalty for playing down, but there's a bonus for playing up, which is why you would see in to give you an example, in class 2, the Richmond Lafayette County, Richmond lost to Lafayette County in the regular season, but they had more points and were technically the 1 seed in the district. But then there's the head-to-head rule. If you've beaten someone head-to-head and you're behind them, you get moved up automatically. So that's how they kind of get them in. I think in Missouri, now that they've gone to the spreading out of teams evenly, and I almost think you could do that in class 1, 2, and spread them out even a little more evenly. You've lost some of the what would happen was the 1-8. There were a lot of 1-8 games where some really bad teams were playing some really good teams and getting bludgeoned. So that's kind of gone away a little bit since they've gone to that. So that kind of solves that problem. Class 1 has a little bit of that since they still have 8 teams. Class 6 really doesn't have that because there's only 32 teams. So the difference between the worst team and the best team is not as deep. It's getting better. It's still not as good as I'd like it to be. I would love it to be. And you want to talk about Virginia, like when I was in high school, when you were covering games, it was your conference was your district.
That's right.
And if you won you played everybody. And if you won, you went on to the postseason, or sometimes 2 teams out of that district went on to the postseason. And there was 3 classes when I graduated in '89. I think there's 6 in Virginia now. Mm-hmm. And so I like that. I would say 8-team districts, play everybody in your district. So you'd have a 7-game season.
That'd be your conference, basically.
That'd be your conference, basically. And then you'd have 3 non-con games, because you could play a 10th game, which is what the regular season used to be. But I would take the top 4 teams and send them on to the playoffs, or play at 8, 9. Take the top 4 teams, send them on the playoffs, and the bottom 4 teams play each other. I would do that in classes 1 through 5. I think class 6 with 8 teams, especially here in the Kansas City area. I'm not saying Liberty North is a lock to beat Blue Spring South. But Blue Spring South's a good football team. Just got done beating Ray Peck. A 3-win team. Park Hill, South Park Hill, and Blue Springs are 6, 7, and 8, and don't have a ton of wins, but they're a good football team. So I think class 6 is fine. I love the idea of playing each other and then reseeding out of that. The one thing I have, and this is a suggestion for both sides of the state line, is you don't have to treat everything exactly the same. If class 6 football is so much bigger than everybody else that they need their own 32 team division, then treat them differently than you would a class 1 school that's got 100 kids. I like the idea of playing each other, and you could use the old district point system, the plus or minus, to kind of decide if there was a head-to-head that didn't work out and that kind of thing, or even take the top 6 in a district if it's an 8-team district, and let the bottom 2 play a final week season, which would be more team, apples to apples type thing. So that's kind of the Missouri thing, and I think that they've really focused in Missouri on classification size. That's kind of been with the multiplier and things. I think they're more worried about that than they are the actual what happens when they get into the playoffs and that kind of thing. And there is a disease of, well, we play a district tournament in basketball. That's how we do it in basketball. That's how we do it in tennis. That's how we do it in golf. That's how we do it. I'm like, well, these are all football is a totally different sport than any other sport out there. And I think it should be treated that way.
Okay. Well, let's quickly go over to the Kansas side, which is different. Their structure is different. I really liked your idea of let's just take we'll take the top class 6A on the Kansas side, 32 teams. There's an East and a West. So pretty much the eastern side of the bracket is all Kansas City, Johnson County, Wyandotte County. The western side is the rest of the state, predominantly Wichita, but the rest of the state. And it's seeded 1 through 16 on both sides, and 1 plays 16 in the East and in the West. So I don't have the bracket in front of me, so I can't tell you what the 1/16 game in the East is.
I think it's Shawnee Mission North and Olathe North, and I think it's Shawnee Mission West. Get that up here real quick. Let's see. I think there's a website. Yeah, Olathe North, Shawnee Mission West, and then the 2 is Olathe West, Shawnee Mission South. Shawnee Mission South is a little more competitive than Shawnee Mission West, and unfortunately, and I'm a big Tim Callahan fan of Shawnee Mission West, they haven't competed at all this year.
Okay,
They really struggled.
So one of your ideas here is to avoid big mismatches, and that's what you're likely to have on the first week of the Kansas playoffs.
Yes, and in 5A you've got Turner and Mill Valley who haven't really competed all season long, or Turner and Harmon who haven't competed all season long are going to play DeSoto and Mill Valley in week 1, and Harmon. And I'm not trying to single out Harmon because they essentially have lost 2 years of football. They didn't play in 20, and then they got shut down in 21. So that's almost like a new program again. But they that's a game where a few years ago they played Shawnee Mission East in the 116 when they were in 6A, and it was it's 60-0 at halftime. There's no the old district system afforded a team. Every team, there was at least, there's a possibility you weren't going to the postseason, but you had a chance to win your last game.
Right. Right.
Which is something that happens for every other football team, at college and pro. They get a chance to win their last game and kind of go on from there. The 116 is really glaring. I mean, it's the chasm between those teams in 3A, 4A, and 5A. That's how they do the 1-2-16. 1A, 2A, 3A still does an old district system. They've got 5 teams mostly. There's a couple 16 districts in the top 4 make it, and they all play each other. So I think Kansas does it pretty well there. I just think that 15 and 16 for the most part probably don't need to play, and it rewards the 1 seed and the 2 seed outside of just having home field for a couple rounds. Gives you a week off, and I know when they started doing that in Missouri, and that teams got weeks off. It was 5 that was the first one that would get those buys. And, some coaches don't like it. They want to keep playing their kids. They want to keep them in that mode. But, hey, if you got a guy who's banged up a week without playing, I mean, that's a reward. Right. You could take time and do those kind of things. And it's a big time reward for your team to have that week off. So that's just kind of my thoughts. I love the idea of playing everybody. I would, if I was Kansas, I'd get rid of the 6. You could solve that a little bit by going to 18. And do that.
True. Yep.
But and the other thing is they're straight record, and then winning record / winning percentage I think has become an issue because of the COVID years, and then it's points, and then it's head. I think head is in there as well. So you have teams that don't play anywhere near the competition, sitting on some 1 seeds, and some teams that are St. James is a 10. Right. And they still might be my pick to win the whole thing. I mean, Miege is a 5 or a 4. I think they're a 4. Aquinas is a 5. I mean, St. James is a 10 is not something that anybody wants to see. I'm sure, right?
No. If you're opposite that 10 seed and that's your first round opponent, that really is.
Well, they're playing Baser Linwood, who's a 7, and they've lost 2 games. And that's a game that's been played in the quarterfinals the last few years. I mean, your Baser, you probably have to play Aquinas, Miege, or St. James at some point. You drew them in the first week.
Right. All right. Officials in Missouri and Kansas, listen to this man, Dion Clisson. He knows what he's talking about here. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, let's just get right into the brackets and who Dion likes on both sides. We'll be right back. Hey, this is Blair. There are several ways to access the Star Sports section. Let me tell you about a couple of them. There is Sports Pass. For $12.99 a month, you get unlimited digital access to all of the Star Sports content, including beat writing, columns, features, pretty much everything we write. The deal renews monthly until you tell us to cancel. For $159.99 a year, you get everything the Star has to offer digitally, including sports and the e-edition. Go to kansascity.com and drop down to the bottom of the page where it says Start a Subscription for more information. Your support has never been more important. As always, thanks for reading and listening. We're back on SportsBeat KC with Dion Clisson of Preps KC. Does a great job covering football on high school football in Missouri and Kansas. Let's start in Missouri, Dion. Liberty North has been all year, just been the top team in the metro area, both sides of the state line. It's always been Liberty North. At least I've got to think that they're the favorite to win the whole thing on the Missouri side.
They're a little dinged. Their tailback, the junior Micah Joe Barnett, I guess during Blue Spring South game, 3 weeks ago. He caught a partial tear of his ACL, sat out a game. I guess, swelling went down, all that kind of stuff. Looked like it was, and they basically said, cleared him to play. It's like, it's kind of like the elbow, for a pitcher. If there's a partial tear, you can either go ahead and have the surgery right away, or you can pitch with it till it goes. So he played 2 games, modified carries, nothing really big. And then last Thursday in practice by himself doing a drill, tore the rest of the way. So they're down a dynamic tailback. They've got depth there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Liberty North is because they've got a lot of players. They've got Sam Van Dyne, a quarterback who's there, who was a Simone finalist last year. He hasn't thrown it a ton because they haven't needed him to. They've got outstanding receivers, so that offense will be fine. Oh, and by the way, they probably have the best defense in the state. So they don't need to go out and score 40 points a game, though that will change up their dynamic a little bit, but they can still throw it and do what they need to do. They got a great offensive line, so the backups can go there. So, yeah, I think they are the class. They get Blue Springs, who is a much better Blue Springs team than it was in week 1 and just beat Ray-Pac and scored in the 60s. I think they'll get that win. The 2 seed in that is Staley. Turns out that Rampy guy can coach.
I heard that. I heard that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Rampy at Staley. It's much to the similar mode that when he was at Lawrence. I mean, they struggled a little bit last year. In Lawrence, first year, kind of figuring out what they were doing. And then second year, got things going. Third year, one of the best teams in the state. He may be a year ahead. They're sitting there at 7-2, and they're young. They got a lot of sophomores that are playing. They get Park Hill South team that's playing really well. Briggs Bartosh, kind of their Swiss Army knife. He's been a tailback for them. He stepped in and said, "Okay, I'll play quarterback." They're playing real well. DJ Jones is a tailback for them. They've got a lot of weapons. They're scoring a lot of points. That's a rematch from a game that Staley won a few weeks back. That's the 2-7. The 3-6 is another great game. Rockhurst and Park Hill. Park Hill can score on anybody, and Rockhurst has got one of the best defenses right there with Liberty North. And then the 4-5 game is a rematch from last week. Blue Springs South and Blue Springs South handled Liberty. So, the winner of the Blue Springs South game probably get Liberty North. I'd love to tell you that the 2 and 3 are locks, but I don't think they are. I mean, I'm not going to be stunned at those 6-7 teams. That just shows the depth in Kansas City. And it's one of those years, sometimes we're top heavy in Class 6. We got 3 or 4 teams that are the top dogs, but I think it has a lot to do with the change in the Suburban Conference when they split the gold and they had the silver and the gold that are just Class 6 teams, and the size, and it kind of helped everybody play teams of their size and be able to find some success and get some wins where some teams maybe wouldn't have gotten wins before. But I think it's a year where legitimately, if you put the teams on a 64 team bracket, you get to the 16 and there'd be about 7 Kansas City teams. And then the other bracket, Lee Summit North, they're playing with, and Ray-Pac and Lee Summit West are playing with the South teams. Lee Summit North matchup. North's got the 2 seed there. Nixa is the 1 seed in that group. Lee Summit West is going to Kickapoo. They're the 6. Kickapoo's the 3, and then Joplin and Ray-Pac, which is an interesting game, is the 4-5.
In the state semifinals, does 1 play 2 and 3 play 4?
This year it's 1-4. 2-3. So Liberty North and Lee Summit North districts go opposite ways. It's kind of the opposite it was last year, where Lee Summit North won their district, had to play CBC. Liberty North won their district, had to play Troy Buchanan. It's just flipped. That's probably, those are the top dogs. Nixa is the 1 seed. That's we talked about brackets and points. There are still some shortcomings in the point system, because heading into the last week of the season, Lee Summit North was 0.12 points behind Nixa. Nixa had a loss to Republic. Lee Summit North lost to Liberty North. And my theory is, if Liberty North played Republic, it would be 70-something to nothing. How is Lee Summit North behind Nixa? That's the deal there. So Lee Summit North, they're probably going to have to go on the road. And Nixa's a good team, but Lee Summit North's probably going to be going on the road to win that district. But if they do, they should have a good run, because that other district is not nearly as strong as that's the bottom of the 4. There's no doubt.
Got you. Okay. Who's the best Class 5 team on our side of the state?
That's a great question.
I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Grain Valley, Oak Park, Fort Osage are playing the best right now. Raytown's not a bad team. They're dangerous. Belton's got their quarterback back. They're dangerous. I think Oak Park, Grain Valley, and Fort Osage are really built to go deep. They play good defense. They're real physical. They run the ball. Fort Osage and Grain Valley definitely have the pedigree. Fort Osage made it to the semis last year, won the state championship game just a few years back, and they've been to multiples. Grain Valley's hasn't reached. I mean, they're in the quarterfinals. I mean, they kind of been banging their head. They lost to Fort Osage in the quarterfinals last year and lost to Platte County 2 years in a row before that. So they've kind of been hitting their ceiling. It's been 20 plus years since they've been to a semifinal, back when they were in Class 2 a long time ago, before the town really exploded. But they beat Blue Springs South a few weeks back. They're playing really good football. The Oak Park started off, with the undefeated run and opened everybody's eyes. Well, Grain Valley and Fort Osage were the teams. I think a lot of people are like, well, they're going to be the best teams in Class 5. Grain Valley started out 1-2 and lost to Oak Park, and Fort Osage started out 2-2. Neither one of them have lost since. So they really have got things going. Those are the teams, I think. Those three teams are, but like Belton and Raytown and are dangerous. North Kansas City's got a great defense, and Platte County's kind of lurking around down there, starting to play good football. And that's a staff that, they're young and they're probably not ready, but that you just don't. If you don't have to see them in the postseason, you probably feel better.
Class 4 looks loaded.
It is, and you got the district with Kearney and Smithville. And that district's a little deeper than it's been in the past. Van Horn's not bad. Excelsior Springs doesn't look like record-wise, but they're a tough team to play because they play Veer, and so it's an option team. And with a short turnaround, it's tough to play. But I think it's probably Kearney and Smithville in that district. Center looks really good. They have passed all the tests. They've got players, and it's not just we've got some skill guys who can go run down the field. They got some big guys. Their overall team speed is really impressive. They get to the ball. Excuse me. Their only problem is their depth. Last year they lost the quarterback Vic and tailback Love in the district semis, and they were done. I mean, it's tough to play when you got two guys who are as dynamic as anybody in the city. So if they stay healthy, I assume they're gonna win that district, and then they would play the winner of Kearney Smithville, and then if they got past that, they would play St. Mary's, who up until a couple weeks ago was the number one team, the defending Class 3 champions, who just dismantled St. Pius last year. So 5 doesn't really have that roadblock, but 4 and 3 and 2 have a roadblock where a lot of the good teams are all on the same side of the bracket.
All right, take a sip of that coffee. I know you've been trying to do it. So how about in 3, 2, and 1? What should we look for in the smaller classes?
Well, you got the district. Pleasant Hill's the favorite in their district. Odessa's there. They're playing well, but I think Pleasant Hill's going to get that one. On the other side is the St. Pius, Maryville, Savannah, Chillicothe. Those guys are going to have a bloodbath figured out. They'll play each other. The winner is on the same side with Lutheran, with Cardinal Ritter, who's the number one team in the state. That being said, Pius beat Cardinal Ritter last year, so it's not a possibility. 2, you've got Lafayette County and Richmond in the same district, probably the two best teams in the metro. Lafayette County coach Steve Cook's the Chiefs coach of the week this week. They run into Blair Oaks if they get through there in the semis. And then Class 1, man, you got East Buchanan up there playing with Mid Buchanan, East Buchanan. East Buchanan's defending state champion, really good football team. Their coach Dan Arroyo does a great job, and really hats off to the community. They have 63 kids out for football.
Wow,
in Class 1.
That's
and that affords you a lot of depth. And you can wear some teams out in the second half. If you got 35 kids in Class 1, you feel pretty good about what you're doing. They got 63. I think he told me at the beginning of the year that they had 200 kids in school, and more than half were out playing sports, whether it was volleyball, softball, or football, or cross country, or whatever. That's how they are at East Buchanan, and they are really turning that into a place where no matter what the sport is, they're pretty good.
That sounds like an NAIA school where the enrollment is a letter winner in the sport. So, okay. Hey, let's switch it over to the Kansas side. It looks like there seems to be, at least for the brackets on the east side, the Kansas City side of the state, there seem to be some clear favorites in 6, 5, and 4A. So let's start at 6 with Olathe North. Is that
I think your Olathe North, Olathe South, Olathe West are probably your teams, and Blue Valley Northwest. They beat Miege last week 28-21. There's something about teams that win a title that, even though a lot of their great players graduate, that there's something in that DNA that says, well, this is our time, now we're going to turn it on.
Yep.
Still have Grant Stubblefield, outstanding tailback. Aiden Beemeyer, tight end / tackle / defensive end. Does a little bit of everything for them. So I like the way Blue Valley Northwest is playing. Clint Ryder does a great job. Olathe North get a little hiccup last week, but it didn't cost them their number 1 seed. They lost to Free State. I'm hearing that maybe some of the JV got some time in that game.
Yes.
When they got behind. They quickly switched gears. Olathe South and Olathe West are playing great football right now. They both can score, and they're both well coached. Ron Litchfield, who's a former Park Hill South coach, retired, went to Iowa for a while, and now he's back at Olathe South. Does a great job. And then Olathe West, TJ O'Neill and his staff have done a great job building that program up. So those are kind of the 4 guys I look at. And I wouldn't be stunned if any of those 4. And who knows, a Blue Valley West or a Blue Valley could get hot at the right time and kind of warm their way up there as well. And then Shawnee Mission Northwest probably has the best player in Malik Oatis. So he's dangerous. A couple weeks ago, they said their quarterback was hurt and they just ran Wildcat with him, and he had 400 yards and three touchdowns. He said he had back-to-back weeks of 400 yards. He only had 200 last week. So we'll see. They got Blue Valley West this week.
You got the Bubba Starling Award, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, he's special. He's fun to watch.
Wow. Okay. Does the Mill Valley machine just keep rolling in 5A?
Yeah, I like DeSoto. They do a great job. But Mill Valley, especially with the loss to Olathe North, they kind of woke them up. It was funny because last week they were playing on Thursday night and they beat Shawnee Mission East, got up 3-0, and then it was 63-3. And I texted Mick Schaefer and I said, are you going to go? Olathe North needs to apologize to Shawnee Mission East. He's like, yeah, they're playing a little angry. And the thing that made it worse is they had a freshman game earlier in the week, and they had a JV game scheduled for Saturday. They were playing on Thursday night, and they tried to get the JV game moved because of the quarters rule.
Yeah.
And they couldn't. The Shawnee Mission East wouldn't move it. So Mill Valley starters had to stay a little longer to keep so the kids had quarters to play the JV game.
How about that?
So they took it a little worse because Mill Valley couldn't pull their starters because you can't have kids playing 8 quarters in 4 days. So there are rules about that. So yeah, Mill Valley definitely. When you look at the other side, Mays is the other team over there. Avery Johnson, the K-State commit, they're outstanding. They're undefeated. So I think that's probably a rematch of the state championship game from last year. And I'll take Mill Valley because they play defense. Mays doesn't really.
And then 4A is crazy with Aquinas and St. James and Miege and just that's a stronger bracket than
and those 3 definitely sit up there, and none of them are a 1 or a 2 seed, which is funny. But you got Chanute, who's undefeated, Atchison, who's undefeated. Atchison, one of their best teams they've had in a long time. I mean, they play in the Middle Lark League, so their competition is not the EKL. No one's going to pretend that, but they have crushed teams. They got a tailback who's outstanding. So, I mean, it's not like they're just winning by 2 touchdowns. They're winning, they're running clock every week. Chanute plays down south, and their level of competition isn't great, but they've taken care of their business. And then you peel it back a little bit more. We talked about a Baser Lumen team that's playing. They're 6-2. They're playing St. James in the first round. Eudora and Lewisburg each have 1 loss.
Yeah.
So outside of the big 3, there's 5 or 6 teams that they're all going to have to negotiate their way through. And, we were recording our radio show, and Ryan Wallace works for Go Power Cat, does great work for us too. He's like, I'm not going to lie to you. The 4A bracket is fun. He goes, there's good games in week 1, which a lot of times week 1 is blowout city. Right. But there's good games in the whole bracket. And it's going to be every week. There's going to be, I'm not saying that somebody else besides those 3 is going to win that bracket, but they're going to have to strap it on because, Lewisburg and Eudora are really good. Eudora's got some D1 type guys on their team. I mean, there's a lot of talent that has come up in those leagues. And, Lewisburg's 1 loss is to Rogers Heritage, which isn't the best Rogers, Arkansas team, but they're still a bigger school than they are. And they lost to them in a close game in week 1. So they went out and tried to schedule some teams to play. And I even talked about Piper and Tonganoxie, who are 2 good teams to play this week. So it's like those are some really fun teams. I mean, there's some fun games that are going to be, teams aren't going to win a state championship, but they may win a game or 2 and put a scare into somebody, and it's going to be some good football.
So where do you spend the first weekend of the playoffs? You in the command center?
Yeah, pretty much until we whittle things down a little bit and we've got less teams playing. I don't tend to get out and unfortunately, last year, to peel back the curtain a little bit, we had some issues with our host company, GoDaddy, who we are no longer with. So I got out to Lee Summit, North Ray Peck, and then had to come home because we were bogging down, and then had to go yell at somebody about why they were doing it. But I tend to try and get out when I can, especially once the postseason. With COVID, we didn't really. It was weird to get out there last year and be on the sideline. Yeah. It was fun, but no, not this week. Probably next week. Grain Valley, which is right down the road from my house. They may be playing a good semifinal game. I may go watch that or get out and see some of those games. But I was trying to get Blue Spring South to get in that 2 seed, so they'd be guaranteed 2 games at home, so I could go over and see that game as well. But no, I love getting out and watching games, and luckily the time affords me the ability to do that when the playoffs get going. And I haven't been down to Columbia. They're all one-stop shopping down there in Missouri. That's a great thing. Yeah. I haven't been down there since 19, but there's a few teams, if they make it down there, I'm going to have to, like, if a Center or Grain Valley makes it down there for the first time, I may have to go down and take in some of those games and do some personal coverage. But no, it's great this time of year. There's no doubt.
Well, nobody does it better than you, Dion Clisson, and Preps KC is the website. Great stuff. Absolutely have that bookmarked every weekend for the next, I don't know, 5, 6, 7. It's just nothing but great high school football coming your way. Dion, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production crew of Monty Davis, George Howard, Randy Mason, and Jeff Rosen. Tip of the cap to Dion Clisson of Preps KC for sharing his insights. Hey, Morning Sports Edition, best sports page in America. Check it out at liveedition.kansascity.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC where we talk all things sports in Kansas City.